A 78-year-old woman hits the ground. Her purse spills across the airport floor. Lipstick, reading glasses, a photograph of her dead husband. The man who pushed her is 6'4", 240 pounds, a professional bodyguard. The man who hired him is Gene Hackman. What Gene did in the next 60 seconds got him banned from using that security company ever again. But here's what the bodyguard didn't know. That woman had buried her husband 3 months ago. Her husband's favorite actor? Gene Hackman. She just wanted to say thank you. And what Gene did after firing the bodyguard? He sat with her for 45 minutes, in the middle of LAX, while his flight left without him. What she told him made Gene Hackman cry. LAX Airport, November 1995, the week before Thanksgiving. Chaos. Absolute chaos. Travelers everywhere. Families reuniting. Business people running. The organized madness of American holidays. Dorothy Myers was 78 years old. Gray hair, simple coat, comfortable shoes for walking. She was flying to Phoenix to see her daughter. Same trip she made every year. But this year was different. This year she was alone. Her husband Harold had died in August. 54 years of marriage, gone in a single afternoon. Heart attack. No warning. No goodbye. Just gone. Dorothy had spent 3 months learning how to live alone, how to cook for one, how to sleep in a bed that felt too big, how to watch television without someone to share it with. Harold had loved movies. Old movies, new movies, all of them. His favorite actor? Gene Hackman. That man is the real deal, Harold used to say. No pretense, no Hollywood nonsense, just pure, honest acting. They had watched The French Connection together at least 20 times. When Gene won his second Oscar for Unforgiven in 1993, Harold had actually cried. He deserved it, Harold said, wiping his eyes. He's the best there ever was. Now Harold was gone, and Dorothy was walking through LAX, trying not to think about how quiet Thanksgiving would be this year. That's when she saw him. Gene Hackman was having a bad day. He had just finished 3 weeks of press interviews for a film he didn't even like. Shake hands, smile, answer the same questions 100 times. The performance that never ends. He was tired. He was irritable. He wanted to be home in New Mexico, not in an airport surrounded by strangers. That's why he had Victor Reyes, 32 years old, 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle, professional bodyguard. Victor's job was simple: keep people away from Gene, create space, let the man move through the world without being mobbed. Gene didn't like having a bodyguard. He wasn't afraid of people. He just wanted to be left alone. But his manager had insisted. You're too recognizable, Gene. One bad encounter and it's all over the news. Just let Victor handle it. So Gene let Victor handle it. That was his first mistake. Dorothy spotted Gene from 30 feet away. She recognized him instantly. The walk, the way he carried himself. Even with the baseball cap and sunglasses, she knew. Her heart started racing. Should she say something? Harold would have wanted her to. Harold would have been thrilled. But what would she say? My dead husband loved you? That sounded crazy. She hesitated, watched him walking. Watched him getting farther away. And then she thought about Harold. Harold, who spent 54 years making her feel brave. Harold, who always said, the worst they can say is no. Harold, who would never get another chance to meet his favorite actor. Dorothy started walking, faster than her old legs wanted to go. Mr. Hackman? Mr. Hackman? Victor heard his name before Gene did. He turned, saw an old woman approaching, moving fast, too fast. Victor didn't see a 78-year-old widow. He saw a threat, a breach of his perimeter, a problem to be solved. He stepped between Gene and Dorothy. Ma'am, step back. Dorothy stopped, startled. I just wanted to... I said step back. But I only wanted to tell Mr. Hackman. Victor put his hand on her shoulder and pushed. It wasn't violent, not by Bodyguard standards. Just a firm redirect, the kind of thing Victor did 100 times a day. But Dorothy was 78 years old. She weighed 110 pounds. She wasn't expecting to be touched. Her foot caught on her carry-on bag, and Dorothy Myers fell. It happened fast, too fast for anyone to stop it. Dorothy's arms went out, trying to catch herself, failing. Her purse flew open, contents scattering across the terminal floor, lipstick rolling under a chair, reading glasses skidding across tile. A photograph, a man in a military uniform, landing face up near Jean's feet, and Dorothy, on the ground, 78 years old, in the middle of LAX. Not hurt, not really, but humiliated, shocked, tears already forming in her eyes. People were staring, some pulling out cameras, others frozen, not knowing what to do. Victor stood over her, face blank. "Ma'am, you need to stay back from Mr. Hackman." Jean turned at the sound of the commotion. What he saw made his blood freeze. An old woman on the ground, his bodyguard standing over her, her belongings scattered like debris, and a photograph at his feet. A young man in uniform, smiling. Jean crossed the distance in 3 steps. "What the hell did you do?" Victor looked confused. "She was approaching too fast. I redirected her. Standard protocol. Standard protocol." Jean's voice echoed through the terminal. People stopped walking. Everyone was watching now. "You pushed a grandmother to the ground." "Mr. Hackman, I was doing my job." "Your job?" Jean knelt next to Dorothy. "Ma'am, are you hurt? Please, let me help you." Dorothy was crying, not from pain, from embarrassment. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have bothered you. Harold always said celebrities don't want to be bothered. I should have listened." Jean froze. "Who's Harold?" Dorothy looked up at Jean, her eyes wet, her voice shaking. "My husband. He passed away in August." Jean's expression changed, softened. "I'm so sorry. He loved you, Mr. Hackman. You were his favorite. He used to say you were the real deal." Jean looked at the photograph on the floor. The young man in uniform. "Is that him?" Dorothy nodded. "That's Harold, 1952, just before we got married." Jean picked up the photograph carefully, looked at it for a long moment. Then he stood up and turned to Victor. His voice was ice. "You're fired." Victor's face went slack. "What?" "You heard me. You're fired. Right now. Right here." "Mr. Hackman, I was protecting you." "Protecting me?" "From her?" Jean gestured at Dorothy, still on the ground. "She's 78 years old. Her husband just died. She wanted to tell me he was a fan." "I didn't know. You didn't ask." The terminal had gone silent. Hundreds of people watching. "You saw an old woman walking toward me, and you decided she was a threat. You put your hands on her. You pushed her to the ground." Jean stepped closer to Victor. Despite the size difference, Victor was the one who looked small. "Leave your credentials at the security desk. I'll have my office send your final check. We're done." "Mr. Hackman, please." "Done. Go." Victor stood there for a moment, then turned and walked away. Jean didn't watch him leave. He was already kneeling back down next to Dorothy. "Can I help you up?" Jean helped Dorothy to her feet. He gathered her belongings himself, the lipstick, the glasses, Harold's photograph. He handed the photograph back to her carefully, like it was precious, because it was. "Where are you flying today?" "Phoenix, Gate 34B, to see my daughter." Jean looked at his watch, then at the departure board, then at Dorothy. "I've got 2 hours before my flight. There's a coffee shop right over there." Dorothy blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Would you do me the honor of having a cup of coffee with me? I'd like to hear about Harold." Dorothy stared at him. Gene Hackman, 2-time Oscar winner, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, asking her for coffee. You want to have coffee? With me? I want to hear about a man who watched my movies. A man who made you brave enough to walk across an airport to talk to a stranger. Gene offered his arm. Please, it would mean a lot to me. They sat in that coffee shop for 45 minutes. Dorothy talked. Gene listened. She told him about meeting Harold at a dance in 1941. He was 19. She was 17. He asked her to dance 3 times before she said yes. Why did you say no the first 2 times? Because he was too handsome. I thought he was playing a joke on me. Gene smiled. But you said yes the 3rd time. He looked so sad when I said no. I couldn't bear it. She told him about their wedding. Small ceremony. His family couldn't afford much, but Harold had saved for months to buy her a real ring. He worked double shifts at the factory. Every penny went into a jar. He called it the Dorothy jar. She told him about raising 3 children, about the hard years and the good years, about Harold's job at the plant, his promotion to foreman, his retirement party where everyone cried, and she told him about Harold's last day. He was watching one of your movies, Unforgiven. He'd seen it a dozen times. He turned to me during the scene where you count the bodies. He said, "That man understands what it costs." And then, Dorothy couldn't finish. Gene reached across the table, took her hand. And then, he closed his eyes, and he was gone. Gene was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick. My mother worked as a housekeeper her whole life, cleaning other people's houses, cooking other people's meals. She was treated like she was invisible. Dorothy looked at him. When I was 12, I came home and found her crying. A family she worked for had thrown a party. Someone asked who made the food. The hostess said, "Oh, just the help." Gene's jaw tightened. Just the help, like my mother wasn't a person, like she didn't matter. He looked at Dorothy. I promised myself I would never treat anyone like that, and I would never let anyone treat someone else that way in front of me. He squeezed her hand. I'm sorry about what happened today. Victor doesn't work for me anymore, but I'm still sorry. You came to share something beautiful about your husband, and you got knocked to the ground for it. Dorothy shook her head. It's not your fault. It was my employee. That makes it my fault. Gene walked Dorothy to her gate, not because he had to, because he wanted to. They stood at gate 34B. Her flight was boarding. Gene took both her hands in his. Dorothy, I want to tell you something. She looked up at him. This man who had spent 45 minutes listening to stories about her dead husband. This man who had fired someone for touching her. This man who had missed his own flight and didn't seem to care. Harold was right. I try to be the real deal, but so are you, and so was he. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a pen and a small notepad, wrote something, tore off the page. This is my address in New Mexico. If you ever want to talk about Harold, or about movies, or about anything, you write to me. Dorothy looked at the paper, then at Gene. Why? Why would you do this for me? Gene's eyes were wet. Because today you reminded me why I do what I do. It's not for the awards, it's not for the money. It's for people like Harold, people who find something real in the work. He hugged her, right there at gate 34B. Thank you for telling me about him. Dorothy wrote to Gene 3 weeks later, a simple letter, thanking him for the coffee, telling him that her daughter couldn't believe the story. Gene wrote back, handwritten, not typed by an assistant, 3 pages about his childhood, his mother, and why stories matter. Dorothy wrote again, and again, and again. For 6 years they exchanged letters. Gene asked about her grandchildren. Dorothy recommended old movies she thought he'd like. They argued about whether The French Connection or Unforgiven was his best work. Dorothy said, French Connection. Gene agreed, but pretended to argue. They never met again in person, but they knew each other. really knew each other. In 2001, Dorothy passed away, peacefully, in her sleep. She was 84 years old. Her daughter found the letters in a box by her mother's bed, 37 letters from Gene Hackman, and a photograph. The last one in the stack. Gene had sent it in his final letter, a picture of himself, signed, "To Dorothy and Harold, the real deal. With respect and gratitude, Gene." Dorothy's daughter donated the letters to the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. They're in the archives now, available for researchers, a record of an unlikely friendship between a Hollywood legend and an elderly widow. Gene Hackman never talked about Dorothy, not in interviews, not publicly. When journalists asked about the airport incident, he changed the subject, but Victor Reyes talked. Years later, after he'd left the security business, Victor gave an interview about working with celebrities. "I made a mistake once, a bad one. I pushed an old woman because I thought I was protecting my client. Gene Hackman fired me on the spot, in front of everyone. Do you think he was right to fire you?" Victor was quiet for a long moment. "Yeah, he was right. I saw a threat. He saw a person. That's the difference between people like me and people like him." "What do you mean?" "Gene Hackman looked at that old woman and saw someone who needed kindness. I looked at her and saw a problem to solve. He was right. I was wrong." Victor paused. "I think about her sometimes. The old lady. I never got to apologize. I hope she had good years after that. I hope she knew it wasn't personal." She did have good years. 6 years of letters. 6 years of feeling seen. All because Gene Hackman missed his flight. They say if you walk through the quiet streets of Santa Fe today, past the adobe houses and the art galleries, you might see an old man walking alone. No entourage, no cameras, no fanfare. Just a man who spent 50 years pretending to be other people and then spent the rest of his life finally being himself. Gene Hackman never played the Hollywood game. He never smiled for the cameras when he didn't mean it. He never pretended to like people he didn't respect. And in an industry built on fakery, his authenticity was the rarest thing of all. Is there a moment in your life where a stranger showed you unexpected kindness? Or a moment when you took time for someone who needed it? Hollywood has many legends, but Gene Hackman was something different. He was the truth in a city of lies. If you want to know the real stories, the ones they didn't put in the magazines, you're in the right place. We are peeling back the curtain on the legends. If this story moved you, hit that like button. It helps more people discover these untold stories. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Gene Hackman, The Untold Truth, and turn on notifications. We're just getting started. There are stories about Dustin, about Francis Ford Coppola, about the night Gene walked away from Hollywood forever. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Leave a comment below. Has a stranger ever changed your day with unexpected kindness? I'll see you in the next video. Stay real.